Let me read you from Psalm 98. We just sang hymn number 98, and Heather just pointed out to me that our first hymn was number 89. Here's Psalm 98. Sing to the Lord a new song, for he has done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have worked salvation for him. The Lord has made his salvation known and revealed his righteousness to the nations. He has remembered his love and his faithfulness to the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth have seen the salvation of our God. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing, with trumpets and the blast of the ram's horn. Shout for joy before the Lord, the King. Let the sea resound and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples with equity. Amen. Music has the power to lift heavy hearts. That's not just a theory. That's an established fact. Since the Old Testament times, and it's been acknowledged in colleges and universities and laboratories today. Remember the Old Testament story in which King Saul had an evil spirit come upon him, and he's told, in finding relief or release from this spirit, to find someone who can play upon the harp. And he has promised, as he listened to this music, he's going to be released from that spirit. Read about that in 1 Samuel 16, verse 23. Here's what it says. Whenever the Spirit of God came upon Saul, David would take up his harp and play. Then relief would come to Saul. He'd feel better. And the evil spirit would leave him. There is power in music. And over the centuries, our understanding of the power of music has grown. We know today, for example, that music can relieve the burdens of fatigue. It can calm the anxious. It can encourage those who are saddened. It promotes creativity. It bonds. It unites friends. It inspires us with patriotism, and it lifts our hearts towards God. Baseball players even pick their particular song to march to the plate before they go to bat. Music is being played in hospital operating rooms. It can calm the patient as well as the doctors and the nurses. Many doctors even suggest to patients that they bring their music to the hospital as they recuperate. Great story because of that. Man was awakened after surgery to hear the music Amazing Grace. He didn't know if he died or if he's still here. And supposedly, he didn't believe he was still here until he heard three nurses getting together and they sang When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. Music is being used in ministry to geriatrics, to the discouragement and the boredom that goes with that in nursing homes. It's been discovered that bubbling music that's played with a happy beat, it lifts those spirits. Some nations are using music to train their athletes. No question about it. So many sources agree that music can calm nerves and reduce fear. You see, music enters the ear, but it quickly moves into the mind and the soul, and there it brings soothing and lifting comfort. Music does have power to give wings to the heart that is heavy. That's a key to understanding this psalm that I just read to you, this 98th Psalm. Begins with a song sung by God. The Jews had been held captive by the Babylonians for many years, and they prayed and prayed for release. And God hears their prayers and raises up the Persian Empire under Cyrus to defeat the Babylonians and then to free God's people. The Jews are thrilled with this, that God is ready to upset empires in order to fulfill the promises to his people. Here's what it says in verses 2 and 3. The Lord has made his salvation known and revealed his righteousness to the nations. He has remembered his love and his faithfulness to Israel. Notice two things. The first is this, and that is, this is a solo. The Lord has made his salvation known. He has revealed his righteousness. That's not done by people. It's done by God as an act of love for his people. But also notice this about this song of God. There's a reference to what is known as a royal grant covenant. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of that before. Notice this verse. It says, he has remembered his love. You know what a covenant is. A covenant is an agreement entered into by equal parties. Each party makes a commitment or a promise to the other. There's a lot of covenants in the Bible. There's the Abrahamic covenant, there's the Mosaic covenant, there's the Noahic covenant, Davidic covenant, but there's also royal grant covenants. And this phrase is a code phrase which points to such a royal grant covenant. A royal grant covenant is not an agreement between equals. It's an agreement between a king and his people. And they're not understood to be equal. Only the king can initiate such a covenant. The people cannot demand it of a king. He must do it as a part of loving concern on his part. And also this, the king takes upon himself whatever obligation he chooses. He spells out the terms, and then finally, in a royal grant covenant, the people don't have the right to enforce it upon the king, since the king is the one who initiated it in the first place. What's being said in the early verses of this psalm is that God, the King of Kings, well, he has initiated a royal grant covenant with his people. He has obligated himself, willing to them in his love, and he keeps his promises. When you think about that God makes promises that he doesn't have to make and then keeps them when he doesn't have to keep them, and does it all because he loves us, that's a tremendous thought. Let me ask you, will you remember me tomorrow? Answer yes or no.
Yes.
Will you remember me next week?
Yes. Yes.
Will you remember me next month?
Yes.
How about next year?
Yes.
Knock, knock. See, some of you forgot me already. A royal grant covenant says that when we go up to God's door and knock, he never says, who's there? He knows us from the start. He answers the door not because of our faithfulness, but because of his. It's remarkable. You know, sometimes words fail us. And you know this. There are some people who stutter who can actually sing with no trouble at all. Isn't that amazing? When God speaks, everybody responds with song. Notice the second part of the psalm. It says this in verses 4 and 5. Sing to the Lord a new song, for he's done marvelous things. His right hand and his holy arm have worked salvation for him. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Burst into jubilant song with music. Make music to the Lord with the harp and the sound of singing. That's why we have musical instruments in the church. You know, the brain is divided into two parts. There's the right brain and the left brain. The left brain is given over more towards mathematical things and logic. The right side is given over more toward a creative part. That's the part that sings. That's the part that dances. That's the part that gives color to life. Our society has become very much left-brained. You want an example? Think about the school system. Whenever the budget cuts are needed, what's the first thing they cut out? It's the band. It's the art projects. It's things that develop the right brain. It's very sad. Martin Luther said, "Those who have no love of art are sticks and stones." Music is the way that we express ourselves. I believe the greatest art is the art that is technically well done, which has a message, and the message is true. When we sing praise to God, when we remember the songs that were sung at the first Christmas or at an Easter celebration, music that reminds us of His faithfulness and of His love, there arises within us naturally a desire to respond and to reply and to sing, to dance, to paint, to do things that express the joy that is in us. And when we're born again, when we are spiritual infants, the melody of God's love begins to flow into our lives. We hum. In our hearts, as we live on and as we grow in that, we find that music even lifts the heaviest of hearts. I remember my dad used to sing all the time. My dad sang at our wedding. There was one of our bridesmaids fainted at our wedding, and Dad, in singing the Lord's Prayer, everybody had their head down, eyes closed, head bowed, and Dad is reaching into his pocket for smelling salts because he was with the ambulance corps, and he's trying to get our attention, somebody's attention, because one of our girls had fainted twice. And as he's singing the Lord's Prayer, Dad used to go and sing it at churches. He just worked at Westinghouse. He was just a normal guy, but he would be asked to go sing. I remember he would sing songs. You remember, some of you remember this. Those of you who are older, he would sing songs that were part of the Billy Graham Crusade by George Beverly Shea. And you remember George Beverly Shea? And I know I have picked up the habit that my dad had of whistling. Some of you have commented, you must be in a good mood. Well, I just whistle all the time. I whistle everywhere. And I know I got that from Dad, or at least hum. But this psalm continues. Not only do the people of God echo His song, but the whole creation echoes His song. Did you catch that? Here's what it says. Let the sea resound and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. Let them sing before the Lord, for He comes to judge the earth. Nature does sing, you know. You ever stretched yourself out in a field and just listened? Think about birds and they're singing. Some birds have warning calls, some birds have territorial calls, some have mating calls, and some are just expressions of joy. You only have to listen to a robin in the morning or a mourning dove to understand that. Did you know that the meadowlark has 24 different songs? Did you know that the nightingale has hundreds of notes at his disposal? Termites beat out a rhythm. Bats squeak. I hate bats. Bats squeak and hum. Rabbits and mice beat out rhythm patterns. Gorillas beat their chests. Leeches beat out rhythms on leaves for other leeches to hear. And whale songs, they sing when they're under tension, and sometimes when they are done, They throw themselves up out of the sea, hardly able to contain themselves. If we had ears to hear, we would hear fireflies and gnats and caterpillars, and what we cannot hear, God can. He must listen to a whole symphony of creation. You ever hear the whistling of the trees, the leaves at the top of the trees? Or the roar of the ocean? Folks, long after we're gone, the sea is still going to roar, and the hills are still going to sing, echoing the glory of the God who made them. So what's the sum of all this? Well, let me give you some pointers, what I think are good points. First of all, stay away from bad music. Now, bad music is that which confuses and disorients. Some music, you know this, some music has actually been played over plants and killed them. That's true. The Apostle Paul said this: whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Here's the second thing. Wake up to music, not an alarm. Let the first thing you hear in the morning be a tune instead of Here's another one. Have music in your daily devotions. Or when you're driving to work, put some music on in the car. Here's another one. Read the Psalms. The Psalms is the hymn book of the Old Testament. Read them. And oh yes, parents, sing with your kids. And sing in church. Don't be sissified about your voice. I know we would take this before Caleb was born. The 5 of us, we would go and we would do mother-daughter banquets. We would do Christmas programs. I'd play the piano. The 3 kids would sing with Cheryl. Music was so important in our family. Ephesians chapter 5 states that we are to address one another with songs and hymns and spiritual songs. So use your talents to sing in either of the services that we offer here. Or learn an instrument. I don't care how old you are. You can learn an instrument. I taught an 86-year-old person how to play the piano. I taught a 6-year-old how to play the piano. You can learn an instrument. That helps to develop your right brain. And it opens up your life. So your expression of joy to God can be so much more. And when you're ready to take your last breath, sing the very best you can. And God will accompany you to your rest. So this morning we're going to share in the sacrament of communion. And when in biblical times, specifically New Testament times, but even in Old Testament times, but we'll go with New Testament, whenever they would have the time when they would take the bread and take the cup, they would offer a prayer. And so Jesus would say, "This is my body which is broken for you." And then he would hold up the cup and he'd say, "This cup, this represents my blood." And he says, "As often as you eat and drink, remember me." And then what they would do after that, they would sing. And so I'm going to play something that you all know. And we're going to sing the first verse. And then after that, I invite you to come. Anyone who is here is welcome to this table.